Next up, we have Chris Teague, also from Caltrans, and he's going to talk to us about best value bidding.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about best value procurement in Caltrans. And so show of hands, who's using best value bidding or best value procurement now? You used it once. Anybody else? I thought Wyoming was doing it too. Well, then I've got an error in my presentation. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Caltrans best value procurement. Best value procurement, is everybody familiar with what it is, what the concept is? Basically, it's where you have an opportunity to look at other features beyond just low bid, low price, right? And essentially you go through and you can establish what those things are. You can put a weighting system on them or assign points to them. But if you think about how you look at things in your normal purchasing life, it's not just about what's low cost, is it? I mean, you can go out and buy something like a washing machine. Maybe that's the wrong example for you guys here. You can go out and buy a car, and you can say, I just need 4 doors, 4 seats, and I'm good to go, right? But there's a lot more to it than that. Maybe you can get a 5-year warranty from one manufacturer and only a 3-year warranty for another, and it only costs you a few bucks more. Well, if you minimum low bid it, you're going to get that 3-year warranty. But there's other things that have value to you as the owner of that vehicle. So best value bidding is a way to try to get to those other things that have value to you as a consumer, but it's not just minimum bid, minimum requirements, low bid. So Caltrans, in our history, we did something, the early 90s, we went out and did a life cycle sweeper program. And it was probably our closest thing that we'd ever done to a best value bid, but it really wasn't a best value bid, it was really a request for proposal. But it had some things in it like buyback value. It had a 5-year warranty, which was a requirement, and it also had the guaranteed uptime. What made it kind of like a best value bid, though, was when we did the evaluation to make the award, we looked at things that, from one manufacturer's proposal to the next, like how many service providers do you have in the state? How many mechanics do you have? How many mechanics trucks? So that was kind of the closest thing we got to a best value bid. That program has since stopped within the last few years. If we step forward in time, in 2005, we actually wrote a legislative proposal to get legislative authority to do best value bidding, because Caltrans, before then, it was strictly a low bid system. So in 2005, we went forward, we did a ledge proposal. 2008, it was actually picked up by an assemblyman, and it became Assembly Bill 2403. We were gaining a lot of traction with that, but the unfortunate thing was our bill became a trailer bill. And it's even more unfortunate that the parent bill, even though our bill went through both the legislature and the Assembly and the Senate and passed, the parent bill that it was attached to did not. So our bill was killed instantly. That was kind of what we thought, the end of the best value procurement. Along comes around and further in time, 2014 pops up, and we get ledge analysis, like I'm sure like you guys do too, where we review them. And this Assembly bill pops up, Assembly Bill 1857, and it's a best value bid procurement. Well, the odd thing is that Caltrans didn't sponsor the bill. It was actually sponsored by outside industry. But it popped up and it has almost the exact same language in it that we put forward, earlier, with one difference. In our bill, we had requested that we be have authority to do the procurement itself. And in this bill, the new bill, the authority went through Department of General Services. And we've mentioned them before. They're kind of the oversight for all state fleets within California and also for purchasing. The authority went to Department of General Services. Real quick here, it's a 5-year demonstration program. It started in September 17, 2014. We actually started doing it on a fiscal year when we were funded in July of 2015. But it is a 5-year pilot program, and it did have a sunset date to it. Assembly Bill 1857. Really, we show 5 components on here. There's 4 main things that are actually bulleted out in this legislation. The first one was total cost of ownership. Everybody's familiar with that term? Basically, you add up all your cost over the life of a vehicle, and you look at your total cost to own that vehicle, right? Pretty simple concept. And that includes everything from repair cost, maintenance cost, what you salvage the vehicle out for, purchase price, everything, total cost of the vehicle, fuel cost. The other thing that the legislation specifically mentioned was product performance, productivity, safety standards. Next was supplier's ability to perform to the terms of the contract, and that was very much like we had done in our life cycle sweeper program. And last was the environmental benefits. Caltrans was heavily involved in the environmental benefits at the time, and so that was added to the legislation. This fifth one, although we show it as a fifth main category, really it was kind of in the body of the language itself, and this became really important later on to us. And what it said was that scoring method shall ensure that substantial weight is given to the purchase price. That became really important to us later on. It was kind of hidden in the language. We really didn't think much of it, but I'll get to that. So how to create a best value bid. Basically, you establish your minimum requirements, just like you do a low bid spec. You establish what all your minimum requirements are as an agency. Next, you look for what other factors are important to you as a consumer up over and beyond what's minimum, okay? We said Caltrans borrowed heavily from Idaho DOT. Idaho DOT had a point weight system. It said we borrowed heavily. We did more than borrowed heavily. I think we plagiarized a lot of what you did because it was really good. So what we took on was a pointed weight evaluation, or weighted points evaluation. And like I said, we got a lot of this from Idaho. I was told we talked to Wyoming, but there could be an error there. So Caltrans went about, the first thing we did, we thought total cost ownership. Let's go down this road, let's figure this out, and let's base best value bidding on total cost of ownership. So we did that. We started pulling data from our Asset Works system. We looked for fuel costs, repair costs, maintenance costs, extended warranty, salvage values, purchase price. We even got to the level of looking at emission reduction cost. We actually had numbers from California Air Resources Board, CARB, that they gave us a dollar figure on a gram of NOx, what the cost was or what the benefit was to the state on a dollar amount. We had all this data, and that's the road we were going to go down. So we took all that data, we added it up, and for your total cost, and then we started assigning a percentage point to it as to, like, if 35% of your total cost of ownership was your purchase price, then we said, well, that should be evaluated with 35 points. It made sense to us at the time, and that's how we started off to do this. Well, that's how we started off to do it. We soon ran into a lot of issues. We found out that you need to have accurate data to support your cost. One of the first clues was we pulled all the fuel data, and this is a true story. We started off with a transport tractor. It was one of our first best value bid projects. So we pulled all of our fuel costs historically on our transports, and we thought, it just didn't look right. The data didn't look right, how much fuel we'd used and how many miles we'd gone. And we said, let's do a data check. Let's do a mile per gallon number and see where we're at. Well, lo and behold, we had transports that were getting 20, 21 miles to the gallon. I know. If you guys want to know where we bought those transports, it's the same place you buy your 100 mile per gallon pickups, right? So anyway, it was data problems. Everybody's got data problems. We ran into some data problems with this. We had to rethink some of that. And the other thing we ran into is we talked about our downtime or what it would cost to go out and get a rental replacement for it. Well, we didn't have any numbers from our other programs about how much they rented equipment or if they actually did go out and rent a piece of equipment when ours was down. So we had a kind of another data problem. We ran into some issues about, well, how do I put a price on maybe horsepower, or payload? If you're in the external industry and you have a route that you run every day, all the time, and you know how much you carry, it's probably pretty easy to put a number on payload. That's not so much the case in our industry. You have a dump truck that goes out and does slide hauls in one day and the next day it's picking up trash. So that was a little difficult. Safety and ergonomics, safety's priceless, right? So how do you put a number on that? And then the last thing, the legislation required a substantial weight be given to price. Well, DGS So they said that that should be at least 50% of the evaluation criteria, the purchase price. And they took that as that is a substantial weight. We had a conversation about, well, you know, in our transport tractor, say if purchase price, we thought purchase price should be 35%, and none of our other weighting criteria would be above 35%, that in fact, the purchase price was still a substantial amount. We lost that argument, so we went forward with the 50%. Price was 50% of the cost weighting or the points weighting. And, you know, really that was 100% better than we'd ever had before, so we took it and we ran. What did we end up with? Final points award system. When DGS put this 50% points weighting on it for price, it skewed all of our other cost factors, all of our other criteria. So we had to back away from all the things we were looking at, and we had to narrow down our categories. And we said, you know, what is it that we're really after with best value bidding? And it came down to, we wanted reliable equipment. That was the bottom line. We wanted reliable equipment. We wanted, and so we focused our points on support after the sale. Does that make sense? We looked at things like extended warranties. We've got 5-year warranties on a lot of our equipment now. And before when we went out low bid, if it was a transport tractor, we asked for a 12,000-mile, 1-year warranty. That was our base warranty. That's what we got forever. What we're buying today, best value, 5 years, like 75,000-mile warranty or whatever the mileage is. So we extended warranties. That's been a big deal for us. Dealer support network. We went and asked that we wanted a dealer support network that went across the state as much as we could, as many dealerships as that they had, and authorized warranty services. That's a big deal. But we also we dug deeper and we said, well, how many mechanics do you have? How many service trucks do you have? And we awarded points based off of that. And then the last thing, we also went back and we did add some points for performance and productivity, things like payload. As it turned out, when we bought some of the other pieces of equipment, it really became kind of a tipping point on some of the bids. And it's surprisingly, we probably picked up 30% payload increase in some vehicles we bought because of this. More categories. The other thing it allowed us to do was when you do a minimum bid, low bid, your criteria is all set for everything. But there's a lot of pieces of equipment out there that have a desirable feature that you can't get to because it's a non-competitive bid at that point. And so we would put some points on specific things that we knew it was probably not across the whole industry. Maybe only a few suppliers in the industry had these types of specialized options. Specifically, the hybrid type systems on aerials. That was a big benefit because we could have a guy run an aerial in the electric mode, and there was, the engine's not running, you're not getting any exhaust fumes, you're not emitting any emissions, and it's nice and quiet, right? And the systems were very smooth also. A lot of the industry didn't have that feature, but some do. Things like corrosion prevention, the E-coat, galvanized steel bodies, we put points to try to prevent corrosion. And last, this was an idea from Department of General Services. They asked for, one of the things they wanted to do was have us put vendor references on there. At the time, we thought, well, okay, we'll put some points on it. But later on, this really became an important feature because Department of General Services, they put together this, I'll call the 5-star Amazon rating system, where you went out, if in part of the bid submittal, the suppliers were asked to put in their references for like purchases, like quantities. We'd actually call them, we'd go through a questionnaire with them, and they had to score a 4 or a 5-star rating to move on before Department of General Services would even open up their bids. So if you had poor references, you got kicked out of it. That was kind of an interesting thing. This is an example of a scoring sheet that we put together during the process. This one actually happens to be for a packer. Gives you an idea of what points we put on, what points we assigned, and what categories we put them in. And the packer was one of those things that We actually picked up, I think, another 3,000 pounds of payload in a Packer truck by using best value bid. What worked well? Extended warranties worked well. You know, there's, if a manufacturer is going to give you a 5-year warranty with not a lot of price increase, you know, it's a pretty good idea that he has a pretty high quality product. He's got a lot of faith in his product. So extended warranties worked well. Authorized warranty service locations, and I underlined authorized in this. This is specifically if you're a Ford dealership, you bid on this, that you have Ford authorized factory warranty. What this does not allow is if you're a Ford dealership but your brother-in-law has a shop near one of ours and he's going to be your authorized warranty supplier, he's not really an authorized from Ford warranty supplier, so those don't count. So authorized warranty suppliers were a key one. Credit for additional features not offered by all bidders. That one, you know, I think it allows you an opportunity to get things that you think are of value to you that before maybe were unreachable in the normal low bid process without becoming a non-competitive bid. So that was of value to us too. They worked well. Performance and productivity, I mentioned this in the Packer trucks. You know, we picked up, it's 5,000 pounds of payload on the Packer truck. So it was a substantial increase. What didn't work well? Safety and environmental benefits didn't work well for us. We were at the point at this time frame where Tier 4 final engines were coming out, were out, just barely out. Tier 4 interims were still being sold, as well as Tier 3 with credits. You know, we made the conscious decision, especially being Caltrans and being, I will say, under the microscope with a lot of our low emission goals. We made the conscious decision that we weren't going to do a Tier 3 or a Tier 4 interim. We went right to Tier 4 final, and we set that as the minimum requirement. So that's why that didn't necessarily work for us, because we took a very high goal and we said Tier 4 final only. The other thing is if you had a small quantity or a low cost bid, and this is where I'll say there's a low profit margin, those bids, we had a couple of them we tried, they failed. They failed because the supplier base was not interested in bidding on them. The truth of it is that it's an onerous process. It's an onerous process on both the Caltrans and DGS and the suppliers. I mean, literally, we have bids that are probably an inch thick. There's a lot of things that they need to fill out. And if the profit isn't in there for them to do that, they're not going to participate. And that's what we found out. That's what we saw. So unless we figure out a way where we can shrink down that workload in some way for the suppliers, it just doesn't work on the smaller quantity, lower cost products. And I already mentioned personnel hours to develop the bid, evaluate the bid. There's a lot more time in these than in a low bid process, a lot more time in it on the supplier side. The last point, I covered this, total cost ownership requires that you have really good data all across your fleet. So if you're going to go down that road, be cognizant. I know we all have data issues, and they will pop up just as soon as you think that you've got all your total cost down. Things we still want to try. Guaranteed service cost. We haven't gone there yet. Not quite sure how we put that together, but we like the idea of it, guaranteed service cost. Same as guaranteed repair cost. Don't really know how we'd put that together yet, but we like the idea of that. Parts cost. We've had some discussion with some suppliers, and they said they'd give us 5-10% off the list. That's one way to do it. So we think that maybe that is a good thing to put as the best value bid. Salvage value. Even if we don't end up selling the piece of equipment, especially in the construction industry, there are salvage values that are published, and you can get to like a 5-year-old piece of equipment or an 8-year-old piece of equipment or whatever you decide to look at, and you know what the salvage values are for, say, Caterpillar, John Deere, Volvo, or whomever. There's data out there that we think could probably support a salvage value number, even if we didn't actually sell it at that point in time. Low-cost loaner equipment or no-cost loaner equipment. We actually did some of this in the best value, the life cycle sweeper program. where the supplier had an opportunity to give us a sweeper while the other one was down. We haven't done this yet in the best value, but that may be another opportunity. Final thoughts. Not all procurement methods benefit from best value, but I will say from the, I spent most of my life doing low bid, right, minimum requirements, and this is one of the best things I've seen. So extended warranties are only as good as dealership support. You're going to get your work done with a warranty, but we all know how warranties work. When you bring your truck in to get a warranty done, you don't get to the front of the line. Dealers do not make any money, basically, on supporting warranty work. They just don't. So you're going to get your warranty done, but you're probably going to wait for a while. So it depends on how good your dealership support is, depending on how well that works. Total of 37 POs we've issued so far, almost $75 million, and no limits. Every piece of equipment we bought, best value procurement, has been equal to what we bought in the past, or it's been better than what we've done. So I think that alone is probably a huge testimony to how well this has worked for us. And then last, best value is a valuable procurement tool. And like I said, I think it's probably one of the best things I've seen come out as far as a way to do a procurement method. I'm hopeful we'll get to continue. Future of best value bidding. AB 1857 allowed the whole best value bidding for Caltrans. It sunsets December 2020. Part of that whole bill, we have to supply a report to the legislature. The report is due in June of 2020. We've hired a consulting firm to help us with that report, actually write the report, and also give us feedback about how well we're doing now and give us some ideas about how we can do a better job with that. Henry Knipe with the Kircher firm is the one who's working on that. Dennis is working on that with them, and Glenn Hagler, is it old Texas DOT, yeah, retired guy, yeah. So they're working on that for us now. It's going to take legislative action for us to continue. Otherwise, it's just going to stop. It'll stop in 2020, and we'll be done. But I'm hoping that action will take place, especially if we have good results from the best value bidding and the report. Questions?
What's the term of your contracts? Have you told the vendors everything sunsets in December 2020, or is it just one and done, or what?
The contracts themselves?
Right.
We have some contracts that were best value bid that were multi-year contracts. And so what will happen to us is at the end of December 2020, we won't be able to issue another contract after that. But the one and done, some were a one-time contract and some were multi-year contracts. So like I said, at December 2020, we're done. Hopefully we'll get to utilize all those that we can, and then, as I said, it's done.
I'm assuming it's going well. No protests.
So nothing has gone protest-wise where we either ended up in court or in a hearing or like that. We did a rebid. Yeah, it's been fair. It's been fairly smooth. There has been some concerns voiced from the industry. Most of it has to do with how much we're asking them to do in a bid. And maybe not so much we're asking them to do, but we ask them to do the same thing on every bid. And one of the things that they requested was, let us submit that information to you one time, have it be good for that year, and that way when we participate in other best value bids throughout the year, we don't have to continually resubmit everything. That was a concern of industry. And I think that was a reasonable concern. Department of General Services, I think, is still working on thinking about that.
Are you doing mandatory pre-bid conferences with this new style, or no pre-bid conferences? How are you handling that?
We have done some, but they're not mandatory, no. But we have done some.
With the references section of the best value bid process having such a heavy weight in your guys' scoring system, with finding a comparable customer to a vendor, you have to sometimes go to other states, and maybe that supplier is going to their OEM and it's not that supplier. Is there a way you guys, like if you buy a Ford and you buy it from Joe's Ford and then he gives you a reference of Jim's Ford in Missouri, How do you weigh that? Because it's not the same supplier providing you the support.
It had to come from the supplier. It had to come from the vendor bidding. And I think there's some leeway given to, we know that some products aren't exactly the same. Some quantities obviously aren't exactly the same. But as long as they're close and we get an indication of how well they perform to the contract, that's what they're really looking for. Thank you, everybody.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.